Hi everyone, Dani here, and welcome to Spenelli Speaks and another Sunday night summary with Edward Rutherfurd's London. Believe it or not, we are almost to the end of this book. We have 3 more chapters after this one and less than 100 pages to read. So if you haven't already, make sure you hit that subscribe button as well as the notification bell and comment in this video. You don't want to miss a thing. Though if you have missed anything, check in the description. I do have a playlist available and has every summary available to you. So if you're watching this in replay, all of the chapter summaries are in that playlist. If you're watching this in real time, you know we are doing these every Sunday evening at 6 p.m. And then this will take us right to the Sunday before Thanksgiving. And then the Sunday after Thanksgiving, which is, I believe, the 30th, we'll have a live discussion, but that'll take place at 8 p.m. So if you're interested in talking about this book with me live on my channel, please feel free to jump into that. Now, for tonight, we have chapter 18, which is called Cutty Sark. Now, Cutty Sark is referring to a vessel, a ship that is going between England and Australia with goods. There are several vessels that are doing this, and the reason why it is titled Cutty Sark is because this particular vessel and another called the Charlotte Rose are they're of interest to a couple characters because during this time, I guess people would bet on which vessels would return first or in a certain amount of time. So as you can imagine, people bet on almost anything. And in this particular chapter, they're betting on ships returning to England. And the Cutty Sark is like a new one, I guess, and it's a lot of people think that it's going to be the one to win. The Charlotte Rose is it is captained by Barnacle, so we have a couple of our characters betting that he's going to bring it back, as I believe he has been pretty known for in the past. Now, this chapter takes place in 1889. So it's 38 years after the last chapter. So in most cases, I would assume we would be looking at different characters. However, we're not. We have a few extra characters, but we're still following this Doggett family. So if you recall from the previous chapter, we had 4 daughters of Silas Doggett who all married different people from our family tree. So we had a sister that married a bull, a sister that married Barnacle, a sister that married a Silversleeves, and then a sister that married a Penny. I believe it was a Penny, yes. So in this chapter, we see those people again, some more than others, and then we see their children. So let's kind of go through who we see. So a new character that we see in the very beginning is a Miss Nancy Doggett, and we more so see her father, Mr. Gorham Doggett. And they are the Doggetts that had left in the earlier chapters in like the 1500s, late 1500s, on the Mayflower to go to the Americas. And so they're back from Boston and they're just vacationing. They're looking at some enterprises and they happen to be in London during this chapter. So we see the Boston Doggetts coming over and appearing in our chapter. We also have the Earl of St. James, so we know that that is the Ducat line. And he and his sister, so he has a half-sister who's known as Lady Muriel Ducat. We don't really see much of her. What we do see is that she really likes to eat. There's like 3 scenes where it's she's eating chocolates, she's eating like sweets and stuff. And I find that interesting because earlier in the book, in the chapter where it was like Roman times, there's another sister who was sitting and she was larger and she was eating a bag of figs. So it really just makes me kind of irky on like the fact that there's two female characters that are considered overweight and all they do is eat. So that really is bothersome to me because I don't particularly like. I feel like it's like poking fun or like making a statement. I really don't like that, but 'tis neither here nor there. Earl of St. James, the Ducat family line has been slowly siphoning money. So if you recall, there was the original Earl of St. James who got a lot of his wealth from the king. And then as we start going down the line, the sons are like making bad investments and losing funds. And so for this particular Earl, he really needs to marry into money if he's going to save their wealth. And he is looking to this Nancy Doggett to help him with that. Of course, unbeknownst to her and her family. Then we see a Bull. So we see Violet Bull, who is the daughter of Marianne, who is a Doggett, and Edward. Now, the Bulls have become very wealthy within the brewery. Edward has taken on a lot of like, he has become like the official brewer of the army. And so there's a lot of wealth there in this family. And so much so that they are becoming a certain status. So when Violet is interested in going in and getting an education, which is becoming more accessible at this time, they're like, no, our status is too high. If you go and try to get an education, it'll make it seem as if we are less than. So I found that very interesting, that to keep your status or to keep the air of the status, no one can try to get like a real job or do anything that would remotely assume that situation. So she is very headstrong and independent and wants to do her own thing. She's kind of a thorn in their side. We also have our Silversleeves. So if you recall from the last chapter, Esther married Arnold Silversleeves. He's mentioned, again, referring to his mathematical mind. He helps in a lot of engineering. He works at a firm, but they don't really get a lot of the jobs that he aspires to do. He wants to be a perfectionist, but he does consult on a few things. So it's mentioned about the underground, the tube, and potentially doing that for America. And then it's also mentioned that he was a consultant on the Tower of London Bridge. So if you know that, it's the one that has the blue, it's like it's like this beautiful like arches, but within the arches it's the whole mechanism. So how that because the Tower of London Bridge actually opens so that large vessels can go past. It's mathematically astonishing. It's very mechanically astonishing. It's really a sight to see. So if you ever have a chance, definitely cross that bridge when you come to it. Then we also have mention of a young Penny. So from Harriet, married the Penny family. We see he's kind of just mentioned in certain situations. And then if you recall, and this was the little kind of cliffhanger I gave you at the end of the last chapter, we see Lucy Doggett again. So she was 2 chapters past. And then she was in the very end of the last chapter, and I didn't want to give it away there, but now she was here again. And she's about 70, so if you think about all the time that has lapsed, because, I mean, this is 38 years after the last chapter, so that's a lot of time. So a lot of these characters are elderly. Not elderly, but like in their 60s. Lucy's in her 70s, so. Anywho, throughout the chapter, very much like the last chapter, it's very much a character chapter. So we have the fictional side of things, and then more historical things are mentioned via these characters. So like I mentioned, like the Earl of St. James is really just trying to marry into money, and then all these other people are kind of just going along their way, but everything is revolving around these vessels that are supposed to make it back to England. And a shipment or a trip from England to Australia, it should take about 80 days. And the Earl of St. James has bet on the Charlotte Rose, which is manned by Barnacle. And I'm not going to give anything away, but it doesn't go quite the way he expected, in that someone has some loose lips and mentions that he is betting on this, and it kind of makes not just his betting fall apart, but most of all of the things he has planned. And then his life gets turned upside down. And I find it very interesting because if you recall from the beginning of the book, the Duckets were never wealthy people. They were just like regular old people just going on their merry way. I mean, one of the Duckets was literally left at the riverside during the plague. So to come from basically the gutter to being an earl, and now we see there's a little bit of a shift here. It's almost like this chapter was writing itself, writing as like bringing things back to, normal as far as the family tree goes. Because again, too, the Bulls are becoming very wealthy here, and Bogdan is coming back into play, because if you recall, one of the kings had given the Ducat family Bogdan. And previous chapters, we know that there was so much contention with the Bull family regarding Bogdan that now that has come into play again, which I found so very comical, and so much so because the current Bull doesn't even realize that it was their ancestral home. So this chapter, everything's almost coming full circle a little bit for some of the families. But again, it was all fictional fun. There wasn't too much heaviness when it comes to historical pieces. A lot of things were mentioned. We have a mention of Claude Monet regarding paintings. The Savoy Hotel is mentioned as a place of where they're staying. We also get a mention of Jack the Ripper. So a lot of pieces are mentioned or like slid into conversation, but really it's more about these fictional characters. Violet does something crazy towards the end. My jaw actually dropped. I completely forgot about this portion. I'll leave that up for you to look at. But in most cases, what we see here is just how wealth has kind of been upended. Wealth is more based on your efforts and your investments and who you work with and who you know. And marriages are based on not so much status. They are a little bit, but we're seeing more that like love is taken into account. And the potential of making sure that it's a good sound fit, not just status wise, but the longevity of it and what they offer to the table on both sides, groom and bride. So very interesting. And then going back to Lucy Doggett, I found that her coming back into the picture, and she actually ends up connecting with Esther Silversleeves. And for a Silversleeves, which we know she's not like a true Silversleeves, but for a Silversleeves really ends up helping a lot in this chapter. So again, it's fictional fun. All the characters kind of intermingle, and because they're all, in-laws of one another, and we find that they're all becoming pretty successful, and they're doing quite well. And then you have Ducat, the Earl of St. James, who I'm guessing is probably going to lose a title, because that's pretty much all he has by the end of this chapter. And it's sad because I, as you know, love the Ducat line, but they really fell off the wagon for a while there. And it was quite unfortunate. However, we know that the Doggets and the Ducats kind of intersected at some point. So technically he is a Doggett, and the Doggets are Ducats. That is interesting. That is very interesting. Anywho, I would love to just sit and stare at the family tree at the beginning of the book. As you know, it's one of my favorite places to be, but Yes. So, anywho, good old fun. Like I said, we only have about 70 chapters left. That's 3 chapters. So until next week, I hope you are reading something fantastic. If it is not London, I hope you are taking care, staying safe. And as always, you know how it goes. Happy reading.